Welcome to The Source with your host, Dr. C.T. Curry, and co-host Kobe Owens. News all across the nation. The Source. Stay in the loop in the city of Wilmington, Delaware. Work together for change in the community. A call to action to find the resources. The Source, the latest in news.
Good evening. This is Kobe Owens here.
And I'm Sean Coulter. Normally I'm behind the camera, but today Pastor Curry is out on a cruise, so I'm filling in as a temporary co-host here on The Source, which is really exciting.
Welcome to the show. Again, Pastor Curry's having fun out on a cruise while we're still here working. But the show must go on. I want to kick it off and go right to local news. Welcome you to the show, and let's have some fun today.
Yeah, it's really good to be here, and I'm excited to give this whole co-host thing a shot. So Let's get into it. Let's see what's happening in Delaware.
Absolutely. So, here on the show, we always start with if there has been any shootings. And unfortunately, there has been one. Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, so this shooting occurred on May 16th. A 24-year-old man was shot dead. They don't have a report on who the suspect might be yet, but they were able to identify the victim, and that is Cassius Boston. Apologies if I mispronounced that name. So that's an open investigation, a very recent shooting. And of course, we hope that the police continue to be transparent as they investigate it.
Yeah, and the sad thing about this shooting is it happened right next to the Hicks Anderson Center. There was kids out there. There was prom send-offs going on, and we lost another young life. He was 24 years old. So again, if you have any information on it, please feel free to reach out to the Wilmington Police with that information. Again, you can reach out to Detective Brandon Mosley at 303-576-3646, or you can reach out to Crime Stoppers, Delaware Crime Stoppers. Any other news going on here in the city?
Yeah, keeping on the topic of crime, actually, just yesterday, as of the time of recording yesterday, this occurred on Wednesday, the 21st. The police sent out a warning to phones. It did that emergency alert ring that there was an armed robbery at the restaurant store. So there were 3 armed robbers, as I understand it. They said that most of them were on foot, but one may be in a vehicle. They were robbing, I believe, an armored truck.
Yes.
They were able to take the guard's gun. And while they searched the area, they were not able to find them, as far as I know. So I believe that these suspects are still out on the loose. And once again, call if you have any information, if you see anything suspicious. Do they have any profile on the suspects at all?
They don't. They haven't put out any pictures. I don't know what the camera setup is over there or if anyone was able to get any pictures. It is kind of a secluded, it's almost like a warehouse.
Right.
But again, just being vigilant. They sent out an alert, which I was glad to see them use the alert system. I don't think they used that enough, but they did inform the community that 3 people were still at large. And then another one came out later in the evening letting us know that they were still at large. So they haven't found anything yet.
Yeah, and that's a great note on the alert system. That's my first time seeing anything like that, and I've been working here in Wilmington for about a year now. So, and I know that there have been other shootings and things where bystanders and pedestrians have been hit. So, I totally agree.
I think the last alert that I remember in this manner was back in 2021. So it's been a few years. But also I see on here that you wanted to talk about some policy, and I love me some policy. But there was a bill that was recently passed and signed by the governor. Can you talk about that and the impacts?
Yeah, so this bill is a bill that is very modern, and it is basically it's House Bill 140, and it allows people who have been diagnosed terminally ill with 6 months to live the right to end their life via pills, I believe. It is something that I know a lot of humanitarian activists have been calling for, and I know that it was, I believe, a campaign promise that
Hmm.
Matt Myers has now fulfilled. So, I've read a lot of horror stories about people who wanted to go out in dignity, and what ultimately winds up happening is that they're denied the right to have agency over how they leave this earth, and they wind up. I know, in one instance, somebody wound up vomiting, and things coming out of all ends, and just the opposite of the dignity that they were looking for. So I think that this is a really big step forward in terms of just giving people agency over their body and healthcare.
I agree with you, and I think last year, in 2024, we saw Representative Paul Baumback introduce this bill and get it through the two chambers, and at the last second, it was vetoed by the governor, who's now the mayor, John Carney. And I know Matt had made it a campaign promise, but to see it get through so quick this year, and again, it's faced over the years some battles and everything, but I think any piece of legislation should go through the ringer to make sure that there's safeguards there and everything like this. And again, just for our viewers, the bill only allows for terminally ill patients who have less 6 months or less of a diagnosis to live to be able to explore in the life options, which some have referred to as physician assisted suicide. Um, I believe we're the 14th state, something like that. It's not many states that have done it, but it is something that is newer. I think the first state that passed it was only a few years ago, like within the last 10 years. So again, Delaware has taken another step to try to help those who are suffering through some of the roughest times.
Yeah, and it's cool to see us, first state, we're still on the forefront of
Yeah.
passing, what I'd call innovative legislation. So
Hmm.
that was definitely something that brought me a lot of joy. Um, while we are on the topic of legislation, I want to talk about probation reform.
Yeah.
There are two Senate bills, 7 and 8, I believe, that are looking to tackle this issue. Do you know much about them?
Yeah, so Senate Bill 7, again, is based off of SB 4, which was introduced during last session by Senator Marie Pickney. And we had a bunch of groups come together and work on this, GVI, the Center for Social Equity, the Urban League, the NAACP. But this is modernizing our probation system. It includes directing the courts, Board of Parole, and the Bureau of Community Corrections to use the least restrictive probation and parole conditions for minimum intrusions into reporting, right? So this gives more flexibility when it comes to community supervision. This is so that people don't have to pick between going to the parole office and keeping their job. We know that because we have so much backlog, we don't have enough workers who work in parole. People may get a certain time schedule, right? You may have a 9 a.m. appointment, but you may not leave the office until 3 p.m. and you were supposed to be at work, right? Some workplaces will give you that additional, hour and a half to go deal with, whatever you have to. But when it starts to get to multiple hours, then they start weighing, all right, well, can I keep this employee on? I need someone who's more reliable. So that's SB 7. SB 8, again, has to do with sentencing. So it just it codifies the standards of probation used by the courts here in Delaware. And the procedures that are supposed to be used. So again, both these made it out of committee, and will be going towards the full body of the Senate. I don't see it getting too much pushback from the Senate side. I feel as though it will be a good debate on the House side, though.
Um, yeah, I think this is a really important bill, especially considering Delaware's incarceration
Hmm.
climate. Um, And Delaware, I mean, I know that, like ICE arrests have been really high recently, but even outside of that, in the Trump administration's recent pushes,
Mhm.
the incarceration rate has been pretty high in Delaware. Is
It
that
is.
correct?
Yeah. So we have, not only do we have a high incarceration rate, we also have a high recidivism rate. We're sitting, it dropped a little, but it's still sitting at in the high 60%, like 68, 69%, right? Um, so we have, again, and we look, when it comes to probation, the recidivism rate is that, right? So if you get violated for something, then you go back to prison, right? And they can violate you for, and this bill is trying to address that. They can violate you for a lot of different charges. You not being at where you said you were going to be at the direct moment you were going to be, which does not take into account multiple cases we had of people who were supposed to be at work at a certain time. Their probation officer is meeting them there. And they can prove that they're on the bus, but the bus is running a little late, right? Because they don't have their own form of transportation. You should not be violated for stuff like that. And we actually had a well-documented case. The young man actually reached out to the NAACP why he was on the bus, because he knew he was going to be late, to document it, sent multiple emails, and he was still sent back to prison for not being where he was supposed to. So again, some of the judgment as well too, I think has to be better. But again, if we lower our recidivism rate, we lower our prison population, we put more money back into the average citizen's pocket, right? The more people we have in prison, the more money we have to put out for that. That money can be reallocated to something else.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. All the things that you're saying. Um, in terms, I'm glad that you picked up. I was trying to get
Mhm.
us to the recidivism rate, and I could not remember the word. But in terms of other measures to address this, this is a very important one. But what else do you think is necessary? Coming up, that we should begin to legislate.
Yeah, so we have to look at how can we really address the wraparound services that are needed for individuals who are coming out of the prison system. So, is it basic life skills that individuals need, soft skills, or is it hard skills that they need? Do they need job training whatsoever? What industries are we bringing here to Delaware that allows for someone with a record to go into? One of the best places is the port of Wilmington, and that's why the port expansion is so important as well too. But then outside of that, you look at other industries, construction, the laborers, they're doing great work. Representative Larry Lambert runs a program called P2A, which is helping individuals become apprentices, and it has a direct line into various different labor unions. Again, that's good wages, that's benefits, that you can help pay not only for yourself but for your family if you have family and stuff like that. You can get a place because now you have enough income coming in. So we have to be a second chance state, and we can be the first state to be the second chance state, and truly look at how we're addressing our failed system here, by looking at making sure we're building up strong supports for when people come out. Am I saying the recidivism rate's going to be zero? Absolutely not. There's always people who are going to get in trouble again, but we should try to do our best to make sure we keep people on the outside.
I absolutely agree. And another quick question I have: are there any states that you're talking about being the first
Yeah.
second chance state? Truly, are there any states that are passing anything kind of similar along those lines that we should maybe model ourselves after?
Yeah, so states all around have done different clean slate acts. Pennsylvania is actually doing a really good job
Really?
with addressing some of that thing. It's actually a common ground that the Democrats and Republicans been able to find up there when it comes to criminal justice reform. They have put more money into support services for individuals who are coming out, more money into housing for individuals who are coming out as well too. But they still have a very long way to go, and their courts operate a little bit different than ours. Ours are all appointed by our governor, where theirs they run for those seats. So it is a little more hyper partisan up there. So even though the General Assembly up there may try to change some laws, it's still pushback from the judicial side. But overall, they have made, in my view, some of the best steps forward to um, really help people who are trying to make a difference in their life. We all mess up. We all make mistakes. No one's perfect. Um, Sometimes you get caught. Sometimes you don't. But for the individuals who have, sometimes they just needed that course correction. And you shouldn't, if you serve your time fully, then you shouldn't continue to be harassed and kicked while you're down.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's sad to think about the ways that we keep people in prison. And,
Yeah.
I have my beliefs about why that is. We have so many for-profit prisons and
Yeah.
reasons to incarcerate people. And I know nationally or internationally, we remain, per capita, I believe, one of the
Hmm.
highest incarceration rates. So
Yep.
this was a set of bills that I was really, really excited about. And I appreciate you expanding and providing all that information. You're the policy expert. It always amazes me just how much you know. You did mention something, and I just want to touch on this. It's kind of a transition, but you were talking about bills that provide housing and things
Yeah.
for people coming out. I know that we have had some housing reform bills being introduced recently. I believe that, have we talked about it on the show before?
So we haven't. One of the bills that was just heard in committee earlier this week was SB 116, and that bill is a huge bill. It's a right to redemption bill, which it's a huge impact, but very simple bill. It pretty much says that if you're being evicted for the sole purpose of you fail to pay your rent, um, in order to stay in your home and the eviction not go forward, you must pay the full amount back, and then you would get to stay, right? Um, this is if the person does have the money. Now, in some cases, people aren't paying because they just can't pay, right? They lost their job, wages have changed, stuff like that. If you have the money and you're being evicted, this gives you the ability to stay in your place. Some of the landlords have pushed back on it, but most landlords have agreed that, if the tenant is good outside of payment, then no, they're cool with, if they can come up with the money in time to pay the back rent, with them being able to stay in this. Now, there's another companion bill with that, which is Senate Bill 115, and that is for individuals who've already gone through the eviction process, right? So this is trying to, um, if a complaint was withdrawn but it's still on your record, helping address that. If the judge, the court, right, dismissed the plaintiff's actions against you, making sure it's all erased and expunged from your record, right? Final judgments, making sure that we're in favor of the defendant, which would be the person who was being evicted, making sure all that is cleaned up from your record so that you can go on and rent in other places. Because what we found is that it has continued to be barriers, even though you won your case, it's still on your record that it was either a filing against you. So therefore, other landlords may not want to rent to you, which then creates a lot of backlog. Both bills made it out of the housing committee the other day and will go to the full Senate for a vote. And I believe the Senate will try to vote on those next week. This upcoming week, and try to get those done before the June 30th deadline. And then there's a few other bills. So, one is creating a housing development fund, very similar to the federal fund. That's SB 50 by Russ Hustlable. The other two bills was done by Senator Tizzy Lockman from Wilmington, Delaware. Russ is from downstate, Rehoboth Beach area. But this will create a affordable rental housing program. And it's very similar to the federal Section 515 program, and it provides loans to increase the supplies of affordable housing for very low, and moderate income individuals, families, individuals who are elderly, and individuals with disabilities. So again, this goes more to a affordable housing stock production opportunity bill.
Yeah, and so those ads already three bills on this topic. I don't believe we mentioned Senate Bill 149. Are you aware of that one?
Yes. So Senate Bill 149 is another bill that comes out of the Housing Affordability Task Force. And the bills that they put out, the recommendations they put out, Senator Russ Huxtable was the co-chair with Representative Kendra Johnson. But under that bill, it creates a framework for the low-income housing tax credit, which a county like Newcastle County applies for, or a municipality like the city of Wilmington may enact via ordinances to also exempt some of those properties as well too. And this also creates a annual payment in lieu of taxes equal to 5% for them. So again, it most likely will be cheaper than what they would be paying in taxes. But this just creates a uniform framework for all the municipalities in 3 counties here in the state of Delaware. So those are all paired together. There's going to be a few more coming out from Russ and Kendra on based upon those recommendations from that task force.
That's great. I mean, that's already, what was that, 4 bills
4,
on
yeah.
on the housing crisis kind of here in Delaware. So,
Mhm.
that's good to see. Like that's a lot of movement. I know you said that a lot of these are coming from the
Yeah.
task force. Do you feel like we're doing a pretty good job? Like, how do you feel the momentum is right now?
On some of them, it's some momentum. I think we got to do better with understanding where the state is, especially from the perspective of renters. A lot of people in power are homeowners, so they only remember them renting from back when they were renters 20, 30 years ago. I think sometimes you have to understand the moment that we're living in right now, right? Where you could work one job and be able to pay your rent, buy food, gas, get a car, have 3 kids, or some of those families were big families, 7 kids and everything, all on that one salary of making like 30,000 a year. Yeah, that's not happening now. If you're making 30,000 a year, you need a lot of help. If you're making 70,000, you're still struggling here in Delaware because prices are so high with everything. So again, we've seen those numbers increase, but inflation has increased at a higher rate than our wages.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about that. And this is where my expertise comes in a little bit. Just my expertise as a young person. I still live at home with my family. I'm only a year out of college, so that's not unexpected. But even then, I know people who are living at home. They come from, an area of kind of poverty, living off of, a single parent family household, family with disabilities, things like that. And, they went to college, they got scholarships, close to paying off most of their private student loans, doing everything right, pretty much making all the smart moves financially, showing a lot of drive and commitment. And even then, they have to move out. They can't keep taking up the space at home. They have younger siblings and things who need to occupy that space. They can't afford to get a bigger home or anything. And they can't afford to go out and get an apartment. The costs are so high. And that's even with low amount of student loans, people that are paying, 100,000, 200,000, whatever.
Right.
Like we could climb and climb and climb, I'm sure, graduate students especially, but it is really hard for anybody who's saving up any amount of money. And you look at, like, you need a car to get to and from work. So you spend a year, you save up 7,000 in savings, you're feeling good, I'm building momentum, then your car shuts down. And all of a sudden it's like, I got to put my whole savings towards another car. I'm back to square one, and now I definitely can't afford to move out. So
and cars are just going up even more.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I totally agree. The focus on renters needs to be a lot more increased. And I hope that people that have traditionally been homeowners and are legislating kind of for homeowners are more aware of that.
Yeah.
I know that we're out of time, but I have one last quick question. Do you have any updates on the Representative Moore situation?
Yeah. So as of right now, Representative Ray Moore was removed as the vice chair and a committee member of the Education Committee by the Speaker of the House, Melissa Minor Brown. All members of the House serve on committees at the pleasure of the Speaker, so it's in her power to do so. But a lot of concerns have been have risen since then about why she was truly removed from it. There was a statement put out by the speaker who said because of the issues with her credentials as a teacher and putting forth a amendment to a bill that would directly impact her personally. But there's been counterpart Representative Moore put something out saying that she talked about something, but she never actually put an amendment up, and that she's the only voice of an educator on the education committee, so she should not be silenced because of disagreements between her and the speaker. So again, we'll be following this as we go forward, but I'll keep everyone updated.
All right, I appreciate that update.
All
I
right,
think that's all we've got for the local news section. So
we'll be right back. And we're back. We're gonna jump right into my favorite section, the Kobe Corner. But as I always do, I always start with federal news first. And I'm not gonna talk about any policy first. I do want to bring one thing up. So over this past week, we heard an announcement from former President Joe Biden that he has been diagnosed with cancer. And again, when the first announcement came out, there was a ton of bipartisan outpouring of support for him. But of course, there's always some conspiracy theorists that hits the right wing, and then they start running with it. And it worked its way all the way up to Donald Trump Jr., or third, whatever he is, with saying that how didn't Dr. Jill Biden, who's a fake doctor, even though she has a PhD, didn't recognize this. And again, the former president, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Just last year, we worked on a bill with Representative Stephanie T. Bolden to open up that window for free prostate exams here in the state of Delaware for individuals who have a father or a grandfather who had prostate cancer. Open it up at 30. And then it, different levels, 40 and 50 as well, too, to make sure they're being examined. But I did want to just open up the show and talk about this segment, talking about President Joe Biden. He put out a tweet the next day and was like, guys, I'll be okay. It is stage 4, which means it's probably at too or far along to actually get rid of it fully, but they will continue to monitor it. It's an aggressive form of cancer. So again, it has spread to his bones. But again, this is something that they usually find in individuals who are over 70. So again, just keeping him in our prayers right now. As he, goes through this and the whole Biden family as they go through this together. And, the Biden family has been really big on cancer research over the years. It runs in their family. Most notably, Beau Biden passed away from a brain cancer, the same brain cancer that both Ted Kennedy had and John McCain had. As well too, and that was back in 2015 when Beau passed. So 10 years since Beau has passed, which is, again, continuing to pray for them. But moving on, House reconciliation. So it's been debated over these last few months what is truly going to happen. And the reconciliation process it takes the work from like 11 different committees that was going on and combines them all together, and the measure looks to tighten the eligibility for healthcare and food programs for the poor, and could add actually $3.8 trillion to the U.S. debt. It passed in the early evening or early morning of today with a very, very close vote. 215 to 214.
And every Democrat voted no, right?
Correct.
Oh.
There was a few Republicans who voted no. And then there was 2 that missed the vote. One missed the vote because he had stepped out because they were voting all night long and everything. He had stepped out to go to his office and he fell asleep. And another was on his way back to the building, but voting had already wrapped up. So again, 215, they needed 215 to pass this. And this bill is called One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That is the actual name of this bill, and it does everything but that. What it does is strips healthcare from millions and millions of people. It's going to make kids go hungry because it's taken away CB and SNAP program funding. This is taken away and retirement benefits as well too. So again, this bill is trying to make up for the potential tax bill that is going to come and give tax breaks to the ultra wealthy. And I'm not talking about, oh, if you got some change in your pocket, you may qualify for these tax breaks. I'm not talking about, oh, you made $1 million last year. No, you still won't qualify. This is for people who are multi-millionaires and up. You're making $100 million or more. Delaware, we have no billionaires, but people who make over $100 million, we have about 3 that would qualify for the whole state, while the rest of our taxes will go up, and while the rest of our state will suffer because of this inhumane type of policy that they are doing. But this is just the first step of it. It still has to be passed by the Senate. And one of the biggest critics of it right now is Senator Ron Johnson, who's a Republican from Wisconsin. And if they don't have him on board, most likely you won't have John Curtis on board from Utah, who replaced Mitt Romney. Mitch McConnell is a maybe as well too. Susan Collins from Maine and Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. So we will see where this all goes with this budget reconciliation. But again, it is not going to be easy at all for them to get it through. Again, they have to try to find the votes over in the Senate, and hopefully our Senate can hold the line. The Democrats can hold the line to make sure that we're getting some good policies passed and fight back against this inhumane cut. And, just here in Delaware alone, we're seeing how many people are going to be impacted. We're trying to get that estimate. 1 in 9 individuals are going to be impacted by the food program. 1 in, I think, 5 people are going to be impacted by Medicare cuts. So again, numbers like that is very scary for your home state. So I know our senators will hold the line. Our congresswoman voted against the reconciliation. Now it's time for our senators to follow suit as well too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really counting on the Senate here, and the fact that the Republicans have such a strong hold, at going into this administration, and they still barely managed to pass it with 215. It's the smallest glimmer of hope for me in an otherwise really bleak moment. So, my fingers are crossed, my breath is held. Right. I know I maybe shouldn't, but I'm trying to be an optimist nowadays.
Yeah.
I do want to talk really quickly about the changes that were made, because originally, we talked about how it was kind of big news that there was a delay because of a couple Republican holdouts. My heart got racing. I said, all right, maybe we're going to look at some really good reform to this bill or to this, spending package. But some of the changes were actually negative.
Yeah.
Are you a good news first kind of guy or a good news second kind of guy?
Good news second. Good news second.
All right. I'll save the good news for second then. So I know first, they did one of the things that stuck out to me. This is 1,000-page legislation, right? That is insane. I can think of a lot of other good literature to read. But I know one of the things that they really fought for was to move up the date that, as they define able-bodied persons who are receiving Medicaid, I believe it was, not Medicare, have to find employment. And that moved from 2029 up to, I think, December 2026. That was one, knowing people that have really struggled with disability that prevents them from working to get their benefits. This is just another hurdle. And for it to happen so soon, that implementation, I think, is really going to shake up a lot of people's lives. But there were a couple of good things that I'm really going to grasp at. One thing that I was very happy to see was that they removed sections authorizing the sale of hundreds of thousands of acres of land in Utah and Nevada, public lands that Trump has been very actively attacking. He wants our national parks to give up old growth forests for logging. And for me, I have I'm very opinionated. I have a lot of criticisms of America. But one thing I've always stood by and always, touted and been proud of is our national park system. So to see public land defended at least a little bit by Republicans was something that I appreciated. And then there was a little change that I think is interesting where, Donald Trump's paying people to have babies, this little nominal amount that really doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things. But they changed that $1,000 payment that's going to occur between 2024 and 2028 from the MAGA account. So I guess it's an account that they open to the Trump account. And that was something that was interesting to me. It's such a small change. And it shows, Republicans really don't want to be associated with that. Some Republicans really don't want to be associated with that MAGA group that continues to define themselves, So those were some of the, and of course the $12 billion fund for Homeland Security. That was something in this bill that I wanted to bring up because we've got so much, with all the things that we're cutting, the social safety nets that we're obliterating, we still have the money to put $12 billion to Homeland Security for deportations.
While bringing in the white South Africans, and there was a meeting about with the president of South Africa, and it was just a lot of false lies put out by Trump, and the South African president tried to correct him, but he just kept talking. One thing I do want to point out, some of the good stuff in the bill is a bigger child tax credit. So it is going to $2,500 for 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028. After 2028, it will revert back to the $2,000. So it's a small increase, but it is a much needed one, but it makes the program permanent. So this is a very big step in the right direction. The Biden administration tried to do it, and Republicans said they would never do it. Now that Trump said it's okay, he gave his thumbs up, and they were able to do it. One of the other things, I wouldn't say this is good, but they raised the cap for salt. And salt is state and local taxes. So there was a cap there. It eliminates the tax break for incomes over $500,000, but it puts a cap of $40,000 in 2025 and goes up 1% from 2026 to 2033. That seems like forever away.
And that 1% is not going to match inflation.
No, it's not. So that's it's gonna cause some inequalities there as well too. But again, Trump's whole thing of people just need to be having more kids, and he's saying that this package here is going to make that easier for people. I don't see how it does that. Extra $500 a year, even though you said you were going to get $5,000, isn't going to help any parent. That's one case of diapers right there. If you look at the prices of diapers right now, like it is expensive to have a child. So again, Medicaid, SNAP cuts, none of that's helping with families wanting to prepare more to have children.
Yeah, it's their whole push for, the conservative push for having more kids, to me has always read like a kind of push for a white nationalism, especially as they're deporting, people of certain skin colors and going to South Africa and importing, their own skin color and then saying, have more babies. It's really suspicious. I know that some Republicans have made comments about, wanting kind of a more ethnic state in America for white people. So that's kind of, I view this as that it's performative, and it's pushing, it doesn't help anybody, but it continues to push their kind of cleansing agenda.
Absolutely. And, as it goes to the Senate side, we'll follow up more on this bill and talk more about what's going on, what is truly going to be in there. What's not, it hasn't been finalized just yet. It has to be finalized and voted on by both chambers. So the House passed theirs, 215, 214. We'll see what the Senate does. My next point, though, is HB 133 made it out of committee. This is a huge, huge step. We were talking about recidivism rates earlier. Currently, if a defendant or an individual in custody obviously does not have the means to pay a financial penalty, a fee to the Delaware courts, they have no ability to waive certain mandatory minimum fees and fines at sentencing. This bill creates a opportunity for that to be done based off a few case laws, especially a case down in Georgia, to be able to waive some of those fees. And again, if you commit a crime, you do your time. The only reason you can't get out of jail is because you don't have enough money. That's not fair. So again, this bill addresses that. It takes effect. It has to pass the Senate side, and then if the governor signs it, it will take effect in 180 days of it being signed. So again, they are trying to get some good reforms done. I commend Representative Snyder Hall from the Rehoboth area and Senator Darius Brown from Wilmington for bringing this forward and working on this as well too. And then lastly, City Council. So at the time of this filming, we have not voted on the budget yet. We have a few things that are up. We have the budget. We have the capital projects, which is what are we building, infrastructure, stuff like that. We have the mill rate change for the reassessment, property reassessment, and then we also have a bill up to increase water by 5.5%. Then there's a resolution up. Councilmember Christian Wilhauler has put a resolution up asking for a mulligan pretty much on property tax reassessments based off Tyler Technologies admitting that there was inequalities in their formula for the city of Wilmington that has led to individuals seeing property tax increases. And it's not just a few extra dollars. These are, on average, most people will see a $233 increase to their tax bill. In some cases, and it's going to be even higher for individuals. So again, we're trying to do something about this. We have asked both the Newcastle County Administration and Wilmington Mayor's Administration to do something about this back in February. They did not start having the conversations until recently, and now they're at a point where they think it's too late to change it, and that's because they did not act when people first brought it to them, because they don't like the politics of the individual who brought it to them, which is Christian Wilhauler, who is more progressive, but she was right on this. And because they put their personal beefs into this, they are going to cost taxpayers a lot of money, and it's irresponsible. And you can't just create a 1-year program to help with those who are going to be impacted. No, that's going to cost us. We should not go forward with this. I will be supporting this resolution. I hope that my colleagues join me tonight in supporting this resolution, but we cannot accept these numbers if we know they're not quite accurate for the city of Wilmington. And by doing so, we are passing the buck on to the residential properties. It's not very equitable in how they did it. It's 100% putting all the pressure on residential to make up the difference for the city of Wilmington. So we have some work to do, and I hope that we're able to get that done later at the meeting.
And this, I mean, I know earlier in the year there was a tax that was increased on like sewage and maintenance. Is that right?
So that'll be voted on tonight as well too.
Okay.
All that, it was recommended, and then we have budget hearings and justification hearings and stuff like that. So again, as we go through the process, this will be my first budget season as a council member. So again, it's been very interesting to see it all take place.
What do you think the public awareness around this water issue has? Because that's, such a fundamental thing that I think a lot of people take for granted. And if we're talking about personal beefs getting in the way of legislative progress, one of the best ways that I understand to combat that is for the
Yeah.
citizens to come out and say this isn't just their opinion, this is ours too.
We make enough money from our water taxes to do infrastructure projects and everything like that. If we were able to cut out the indirect costs are the money that is allocated to non-water related things. So other positions in finance, all these other positions that are being funded through this fund that have nothing to do with the actual operation of it. So therefore, if we're able to change that, we'll have enough money to do more um, enhancements and stuff like that so that we're more cost efficient. But again, they can't keep raising the water. The water has been raised way too much over the last, I don't know, 8, 9 years. So again, we have to give some relief to people right now.
Absolutely, yes. Well, that's about all our time for the Kobe's Corner segment.
Yes,
I appreciate you very much.
of
You always bring
course.
us the most important news, and I look forward to this segment very much every time that we film.
Of course. We'll be right back, y'all.
And we're back from the Kobe's Corner for our last segment of the show, which is national news. I know that there is a lot going on, and I think that the biggest thing that happened recently was that embassy shooting.
Yeah.
So what do you know about that?
So two individuals, two staffers at the Israeli embassy was shot in Washington, D.C., leaving an event at the Jewish Museum. The suspect yelled "Free, free Palestine" as they were being arrested. Again, this happened on Wednesday night. As tensions across the Middle East continue to rise, protests all throughout the nation continue. I will say we've talked about what is going on in Israel and in Gaza. The issue that I take with this is one, never turning to violence to get your point across. Is something that I do not agree with. But I will say I am looking forward to getting more details about the individual who did this attack and why he chose this event and these two individuals to target with this. These are staffers, not the actual ambassador. So again, as this war is going on, and honestly, I wouldn't even say war, I would say conflict is going on in Gaza. I would like to remind people that this did not start October 7th, right? This started decades ago, and it has just gotten worse year after year after year. And now we're seeing a cleansing of a people, the Palestinian people over there. So again, my heart breaks for everyone, and no loss of life should ever be glorified. So I do not. I just want to say I condemn what happened to these two, but this is not the way to get your message across. Violence does not equal more violence.
Absolutely, yeah. Again, our sincerest condolences to the families of the victims and anybody that was affected by the shooting. Political violence, as we know, has been on the rise. We've always had a gun violence problem in America, but this will not do anything but escalate the conflicts. It serves to embolden, this Zionist perspective because they lean on anti-Semitism to justify at least one of their justifications for the war and the cleansing. And it is just a heartbreaking thing.
It is
to see.
It is. And I think, when you talk about this and you talk about the broader debate, right? Senator Sanders has talked about APATs a lot. Back when he was running for president, through his Senate campaigns, you've heard this a lot, and some people think, oh, it's just another political PAC. No, APATS is the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, and they donate heavily to campaigns on a federal level, statewide races as well too, and some key local races as well. They spent $10 million to oust Representative Cory Bush in Missouri. They spent $17 million to oust Representative Jamal Bowman in New York because they were outward opponents of theirs who spoke out in support of the Palestinian people. And Senator Sanders says he's talked to a lot of his Democratic colleagues in the Senate, and they have voiced that what they're seeing happening in Gaza is wrong, and that they are praying for the Palestinian people, but they're scared to speak out because of how much money could be put into their races. And, when you're in these elected seats, and I know the Senate is a lot different from a city council race, at the end of the day, is your soul sellable or not? In Delaware, it's $600, right? Is the most money you can receive legally. We know about y'all ones who take the other kickbacks.
Mm-hmm.
But on a federal level, $3,300 is the legal limit. And people have sold their souls for that because they can bundle and get, 100 people to donate that max out donation. It shows that we have a broken system here. We should overturn Citizens United, and we should have a publicly funded campaigns here in America. But until people start finding the courage to stand up to entities like this and other major lobbies, we will not see that type of reform actually take place and happen here in America, which is sad because it goes against our overall goal of democracy, freedom, and empowering the average person. The average person can't match their donations.
No, they absolutely can't. And that Citizens United, what a terrible ruling. I've lived in what's the right word? Maybe not anger, but frustration with that ruling for a long time. Is definitely up there in some of the worst modern rulings. But our campaign funding system is absolutely broken. We need reform. As I understand it, they do this by funding primaries to oppose people that are sitting that don't align with their viewpoints. And I feel like as following this big beautiful bill, as they call it, and watching wealth inequality only grow. A lot of Democrats, I feel like, have been faced with this idea of the lesser evil, which is it a lesser evil for me to take some money from this pact that maybe I don't agree with, because that's the way the game is played, and I can't, as that wealth inequality grows, it's only going to get harder and harder to be able to afford to play the game. So that's something that really hurts. We're seeing things happen now that are only reinforcing this and kind of moving us in the opposite direction of what you just talked about.
Right. And I think going forward, right, we really have to make sure that we're doing a better job of bringing stuff like that to light and just having the conversations with people. And it's not just in, Delaware, but all over the nation, right? Talk to your family, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, and see, what we can do to help them get the resources they need to be able to get the information out.
Absolutely. Got a couple more minutes here.
Yes.
And we could talk about any number of things. One thing that happened recently that I'm very curious for your opinions about is the Supreme Court ruling that allowed Trump to revoke the protected status of thousands of Venezuelans.
So first off, this is Trump's Supreme Court. This is 3 individuals that he put on there that have been almost on everything, has been siding with him. Now, there has been some pushback, but TPS is a program that supports a lot of individuals who are coming to America. It's a temporary protective status program, not only for Venezuelans, but a lot of African countries as well, too. There's approximately 350,000 individuals who are operating under that. And that's to help avoid deportation while they're trying to receive their paperwork. this does not revoke it for everyone, but it's a huge portion of that, in which Trump believes that because they're from this country, they are, all of them, regardless of what, if they've done something or not, that they're violent, they're criminals, and they should be out of this country. So again, this is his ongoing beef with the leadership there, and he is trying to remove them from this country. I think it's wrong, and it's going to cost us hundreds of millions of dollars to go forward with this. Judge had halted the program for a while, but now he'll be able to reinstate it. And I think they're already planning on flights being out of here no later than at the time of this showing. This Sunday will be the first flights back out. But it was decided on a very conservative majority line of 6-3.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen that these deportations have been anti-humanitarian.
Yeah.
It really is a heartbreaking thing to live through, and a complete waste, I believe, of taxpayer money. There are a lot of issues that need solving before this.
Yeah.
And we could talk for another whole episode about the implications that this will have. Judges the Supreme Court overturning judges' rulings, the Supreme Court giving him immunity for actions as president. This is setting a really bad precedent for how we can rule contempt, for a sitting president. And that's something that's scary to me in terms of a checks and balances perspective. And the humanitarian part of me is hurting, and the advocate for a strong government part of me is hurting.
Right.
And that's a lot of me, these two parts. So I hope that we can do better going forward. Sorry to end on a bleak note, but that is pretty much our show.
Is that all you have for this week?
That's all I've got.
All right. Well, again, continue to tune in, watch us on YouTube, and continue to tell someone about the show. Take care, y'all.
Have a great week.
You've been watching The Source with host Dr. C.T. Curry and co-host Kobe Owens. Tune in every Sunday at 5 p.m. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for the latest episodes.